And I want to tell all of you about the history of the age pill to start with. It began about 2,880 years BC, where one of the ingredients was written about in what's called the Yellow Emperor's Book in China. And that progressed on through China. And because they've had a continuous history, the knowledge of China, especially in herbal medicines and things like that, was only built up upon and become better and better. Now, this single ingredient metamorphosed into a couple of others, and a person by the name of Lai Qing, and he was a physician to one of the emperors during the Ming Dynasty period, or else pre-Ming, I'm not sure, with it. But I think it was through the Ming. And so anyway, he went and developed this final formulation. And they chronologically, you can go back to China and you can go into places, you can just follow the chronology back all the way through their lives, and you can see what these years, what was involved with people and what happened. And as they did his, the first thing that this product did, just like the gentleman was talking about on the phone a little while ago, his hair was gray, it went white. And he tried it on somebody, and in China they named it Ho Shu Wu, and that means Mr. Wu, his hair go black. And that was one of the starts of it. And why is it going black? It's not that it's a stimulation for black color. It's a stimulation for stem cells. That's the idea behind it, or to support stem cells. Excuse me. I have to use the word support because if I say it directly stimulates it, then that makes it a drug claim. So, but no drugs. There's nothing around that can compare with this. But anyway, he went ahead and developed this formula and got it to a certain point, and then he lived 256 years. Can you imagine that? 256. Somebody was on there saying they wanted to get past their relatives that lived to be 110. Well, you know what? You're on the right track to do it, and I'll give you a few more ideas on how you can. But he lived 256 years. He died in 1930, I think 9 it was. And I have a photo of him, and we're doing PowerPoints right now. We're going to put those out for everyone to see. And a photograph when he was younger and then at that age. And he looks like he's 256, I can tell you that. But the thing that's important with it is that he started taking the pill, and then in China, or taking his formulation, okay? And in China, they marked it when he got to be 100 years old. And they had a party. He had made 100, and of course he was a physician to the emperor, so as a consequence, it was a significant thing. Then later on they celebrated his 150th birthday, and later on from that they celebrated his 200th birthday, and it's all recorded in Chinese history. So what an amazing endorsement from what came from the past. This product, you might look at it this way, and a term I use is health from the dust of China's past. And that's really what this is metamorphosed into. And I found out about his formula in 1988. This before people went to China. Then Mao was just out, and it was going down. And so I heard about it because of a Korean that had come over, and he told me about this marvelous formulation that they found. They weren't using it, but it had been, with the fall of the Ming Dynasty, then there was some turmoil. And with that, the army took over, and those kind of things weren't so important. But they excavated a Ming Dynasty emperor's tomb, and in the tomb, in the sarcophagus where he was buried, he had this formulation. Now, he was a Taoist, and Taoists thought their idea is a Taoist could live forever, and that was the goal of what they were trying to do for immortality. And this emperor, he's the second emperor of the Ming Dynasty. Ming Chengzu was his name, if you want to know that. But anyway, he went on and it was so impressed with his formulation that he had it buried with him. I don't know how long he lived, because I don't know that one, but obviously a long time with it. So government started to look for ways to export things, and one of the things is that a lot of herbals that are developed and very sophisticated in China, and so they wanted to start exporting some of the things for market, and they had come across this, and so they went into double-blind clinical tests to see what would happen in the studies with it, and they had animal studies, and they did start on mice, rats, went to rabbits, and went to dogs, and because they all have short lifespans, and they wanted to see what it could do for them. Well, in almost every case, it came close to doubling their lifestyle and or lifespan. And so, as they were preparing this Korean was overselling some equipment to them. He was in the chemical processing equipment business, and they told him about the formulation, and he got it. And he came back over, and he had a bald head, and his wife was wrinkled, and he said, if I'll give you the formulation, if you'll trade me for some of your hair grower and some wrinkle products for my wife. So that's what I did. I mean, it's kind of think of it biblically like the portage was traded for a birthright with Isaac. But anyway, here's the guts of it. I went to China. I tried it. Well, first I sent somebody to China, and then they went there and they researched it, got the information. He was a Chinese guy, but he was living down in Los Angeles area, and his mother was still over there. And so he went back, hadn't been back for about 14 years, and went back and went in there and got all the information, came back to me. I paid him, of course, to do it. And then he brought me some of the product. I was somewhat skeptical. I hadn't been very big into nutritionals at that time, but I thought if there's one culture on Earth that would know about the relationship, the real relationship between natural products and the human body, it would be the Chinese, because of this unbroken history they have. And in China, catch this, traditionally they paid their doctor to keep them healthy, and when they became sick, they stopped paying their doctor. Ask your doctor if he'll work on that kind of a basis, because medicine is flip-flopped on us. But regeneration is sure better than cure. And this is what this product does, is it supports massive regeneration. Now, out of that, it came up, and a few people started catching on to it into the scientific world, and I had progressed with it and was selling quite a bit of it through my previous company. But it got to the point where Harvard Medical School took it. I won't go through all the history of it, but it ended up at Harvard Medical School. And so they did their double-blind tests, and guess what they found? All the old gray-haired mice had all their full color back. All the ones, and all of them had muscle wasting, poor vision, poor sense of smell. The leather on their pads, their skin was old and flaky. Hair was thin. The tail was in bad shape, and they were ready to die. They put them on it. They were 2 to 3 years is the lifespan of a mouse, and so they were over the 2-year mark, and they put them on it, and they all went back to their natural black color, and then and they had even examined them for brain size, and so when they would X-ray for brain, to see how much brain shrinkage, and everybody has brain shrinkage, except if they're in Sisel. But the point of it is, they did that, and their muscles regenerated. Their eyesight came back, their sense of smell came back, and their brain grew back to its natural size. And they got so revitalized that they said if you put them with young mice, like 3-4 months old, that are just coming into their adulthood, they were indistinguishable between them. They could tell no difference. So they tried to isolate what was really doing it, and they found there was a key ingredient in it. And this key ingredient would support the own body's natural mechanisms and to create energy. And when you create lots of energy, you get more repair. And this is true with stem cells. And stem cells are there, and they're like the mother cell. They produce all the replaceable cells that you're losing every day in all your organs and everything. Now, what happens is when you get stem cells, they're like a car motor, and you can't run it forever. It wears out. And that's what happens with stem cells. They start wearing out as you get older. And they do it quite dramatically, because from conception, there's one egg that's there, a sperm, and you have conception. And at that point, it starts a duplication rate that is absolutely incredible. In fact, 9 months later, that one single cell will become 10 trillion cells when the baby's born. From there, you progressively grow up till you get to about in the early 20s, 21, 22, 33 maybe, and you're growing. You're actually not. It's not like you're maintaining. You're actually growing bigger, better, stronger, young, and so it's all because these stem cells are so active and they're working so well. But then when you get to that point, through nature, biology, through God's plan, however it is, I believe in all that. And what happens is they start to slow down, because can you imagine producing all of those cells over 20 years or 25 years, and they get wearing out. And they figure by the time a person is 30, they only have 40% of their efficiency left in the stem cells. Now, that's a dramatic drop in just 10 years. And by the time they're 60, this is a study that came out of Europe, out of Malaysia. But anyway, by the time they're 60, you're down to about 2% efficiency. And so that dramatic drop does what? Well, if this is the chicken that lays, the stem cells of the chicken that lays the egg, and the chickens are getting old and they can't lay many eggs, pretty soon you're not in the egg business, because your supply goes down. It's the same with the body. As these stem cells produce replacement cells, you have, if you're large size, when you're grown, you have 100 trillion cells. Now women down 60, some of them through there, but from 60 to 100 trillion cells in here. But then you start losing about 8 to 10% of your body mass every 10 years. And so when you get down to being 60 or 70, you're operating close to 60% of your capacity that you had when you're in your 20s. So with that, you see muscle shrink, you see memory go foggy. The brain uses enormous amounts of energy. In fact, only weighs 1.5% of your body weight, and it'll consume 20% of the oxygen you breathe in because there's so much activity. But because of that, they have to oxidize glucose, and it's just like you oxidize gasoline to ignite the car. You oxidize glucose, and it ignites the cell, and when that happens, you split the oxygen. And when you do that, you have a single oxygen molecule it wants to pair, and that means it oxidizes, it rusts. Just like a penny tarnishes, it rusts, and it starts doing that. And if you can imagine over a lifetime with a stem cell, how much oxygen is taken in to produce all of these new cells to replace all of them in your body from your top of your head to the tip of your toes, everything's done by that. So as a consequence, you have a tremendous deterioration in it. That's why the results are so profound when you get older, because it bounces you back fast. So anyway, now we'll come back to Harvard Medical School. So they started testing this ingredient that was in it, and they determined that it increased what's called NAD+. And that is really the energy molecule of the body. And it transfers the energy onto ATP. Maybe some of you have heard of that. And then ATP converts it into hydrogen. And now, isn't that a funny scenario? And then the hydrogen converts it into electrical energy. And we are the body electric. So that's how you're held together. If you didn't have electrical charge, you'd be a pile of ash. And all the processes that are going on, all the communications, all through electrical activity from individual cells and collective systems and everything else. So electricity is the key component of it. And when you consider this, I'll give you a thought that you might like to use if you're developing your presentation. And that is, there'd be no life on Earth if it wasn't for the sun. We know that. Well, okay, so what's the sun send down? Well, the sun sends down things that stimulate, like infrared rays, to make things grow. And so about 70% of the sunlight is in the IR range, and then we have the visible range. But the other thing that sends down with it, the solar radiation, is what is the sun made up of? Hydrogen. And so when it blasts off the hydrogen, that hydrogen comes down with that cosmic radiation that goes out, and when it gets in the Earth's atmosphere, then it goes down and hits a plant. And a plant has chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is designed to take that solar energy that's coming and convert it into a chemical energy. So Einstein said one thing about energy. He says, you can't destroy energy, you can't lose energy, but you can change it in form. And so that's what's happening here. The plants change it into a chemical energy. Then it gets this, and it's the hydrogen molecule that's in there that's doing it. And so as they change it from chemical energy in different forms in the plants, and then animals come along and eat it, and they change it into other forms of chemical energy, and then we eat both of those, and we change or sort of convert it to our own systems for chemical energy. And then it gets right down into the stem cell, which is the key to youth or old age, depending on where you're at. And as it gets there, you can get you go through the process, and there's about 30 steps. I won't go through those, but anyway, through the stem cell, and it comes up to where the second to last step is the hydrogen is released. And when the hydrogen is released, remember, it's the smallest atom in the universe. It's the smallest molecule in the universe when it pairs. And everything is built. Gold is made up of hydrogen. I don't know if you knew that or not, or lead or calcium. It's what's made all of these things because of intense pressures, and I won't go through all of it. But hydrogen is just the essential ingredient of the universe was built on. So anyway, now you release that biological hydrogen, which has enormous power, and with it, your cells take that and convert it into electrical energy. So that's one reason as you see this thing coming up that you start feeling so much better because the energy's there. Now, the second thing that happens is if you can increase the energy in the stem cell that is getting older, it has the ability within it to remodel itself, like overhaul a car engine. And so this old stem cells, they're getting a stem cell looks kind of like an egg with a yolk and white, but as it gets older, it gets very brownish and yellow because it develops or creates new cells, and there's a certain amount of waste that doesn't get out of the cell, and it's called lipofuscin. And so it starts plugging it up like sludgy oil, and that happens, and then the cell starts crinkling up like you crinkle up a piece of paper, and that's what it looks like. And so when they were doing the studies at the University, Harvard Medical School, they said that they took the old stem cells and mice and examined them, and after they had been on this product, they said the old stem cells had returned just like where they're indistinguishable in look, size, color, not color, but efficiency of a younger stem cell. And he said you couldn't tell them apart, and then there's some color differences because there's a lot of cellular garbage in there. But anyway, that was an amazing thing, and so you started to increase the duplication rate. So you're making more cells. So instead of you're losing 80 to 100 cells, probably every day. And so, but you got trillions, But it accumulates and builds up, and that's what happens. Now, suddenly, suppose you weren't losing 80 or 100 a day, but you have a certain amount you produce and a certain amount that you lose, and so your loss rate is that. But suppose you took it up to above that. So now you're producing, let's just say even 10% more, and the dramatics were greater than that. But if you put 10, 20% more cells, then you're losing, and you've changed. If you're sitting out there at 50 or 60, and you look at your body, and it's not what it was. But you know what? You start on this, and now you're producing more cells than you're losing, and the body mass starts to build. and the organs rebuild, and the muscles rebuild, and bone, and all of that, all supported by this activity, which is supported by this ingredient that comes in. Now, the more NAD you can produce, this ingredient is like be called a precursor to NAD+. And so the more you take it, just like the gentleman was on, can I take 9? Well, yeah, you can take 9, because what you're going to do is you're going to create even more levels of NAD+, which is going to increase the duplication rate of the cells, and you're going to and it goes. Remember, this goes through every cell, even the replacement cells. So that's one of the reasons you feel so good, is all of those are being energized too at the same time, and it's all electricity that's being released in the body to regenerate, and you really start feeling great because of what's happened. So here I've been following this all the way along, and it got to the point where they discovered this molecule. In fact, is David Sinclair, who was the head researcher there at Harvard, he notified NASA, and he told NASA, he says, I've got the way for you to get to Mars. Now, you might have wondered, we went to the moon in 1967, but we haven't gone to Mars yet. And the reason you can't get to Mars is not because we don't have the technology and the ship and all of that which could do it. It's that solar radiation is so small that it goes right through anything. It goes through the hull of the ship, and if there are people in it, it goes right through them. It's just making them like little teeny minuscule, the look of Swiss cheese as they're all going through their bodies. And then it goes right out the other side of the ship. And so the people they send up into space, what I read on this is if they went up and were in the lab for perhaps a year, the space lab, they'd come back about 5 years older, and 100% of them would get cancer. And that's all from solar radiation, because they don't have a protective atmosphere. So then the idea, if you send them to Mars, that's a 3 to 5 year mission. And the shocking thing about it is everybody that goes out on this mission, no one would come back because of it. They'd be absolutely destroy their whole biological systems. And so what Dr. Sinclair said, this ingredient can, or when you get this NAD produced for it, it can repair mutagenic damage just about as fast as it happens. And he said, so now you can send somebody to Mars. Well, we're not in the business here in inter-network marketing of sending people to Mars, but we want to send you into orbit with this thing, and because this product has got enormous power. So I've been following it for 30 years, and I've found some things that were important, and I took a look at the stem cell, and I realized there's one big thing that is the problem, and that is the stem cells, as they do so much activity, they do two things. They develop a plaque within them. It's from oxidizing glucose, and it's like plaque on your teeth. And it starts coating proteins, which is in your DNA and other processes within the stem cells. And when it coats it with that over a period of time, then it starts to caramelize. And then it makes the proteins so they can't respond the way they're doing to the stimulation so the stem cell can work properly. So the effectiveness of the stem cell goes down, down, down because of this glycation. That's what they call it. Second thing is the L nutrients and everything that comes into the cells. They are in there to run the cell, and then if it's a stem cell, to duplicate it, and it has to provide all the material that comes through it to be converted into what it takes to make a cell, a new cell. So what happens is like building a house. You get done building the house, and you got garbage all over. You got pieces of lumber, you got some shingles, you got plumbing and a little cement and all this stuff. Yeah, the same thing happens in creating new cells. And so you build up this cellular garbage, and it's lipofussion. So as I looked at this, and I realized that now we have the power to support with a precursor to enormous amounts of NAD. And I started, of course, I've been on this for a long time, and I knew some ways to do it better than even what I think they did at Harvard. And so I took those, and there's studies to to show that and show the effectiveness of it. So I took that and started building this product with this. But I realized if you got an old car engine and you're trying to run good gas through it, it's still not going to run as good, as if it was rebuilt. So, and how can it rebuild? And the stem cells, if you get all this energy, they'll start to repair and rebuild themselves. And even the mitochondria, which is the energy engines, and there's hundreds of them in the cell, in the stem cells, they start wearing out too, and they start leaking electrons, and it causes a lot of oxidative damage. But they have a separate DNA than the nucleus, and they can repair themselves too. So what it needs is lots of NAD to be able to do that. So as that happens, if you have systems that are worn out or plaqued over, then you're not going to have the degree of efficiency that you could have if it was clean. And so I took a look at compounds that had been shown to have effects on removing glycation buildup within, and that was a significant thing. But then the key to it was that was left that really was the inhibitor was all of the cellular garbage, lipofuscin. And I found a combination of ingredients that would remove the glycation, and then I found a combination of ingredients, all based on scientific research I do, that would break down the lipofuscin into small enough molecules so that the portals in the cell now could excrete it. And they get bigger. They just get globby and they can't get out of the cell. And so there's compounds now that can support the stem cell system so that it can break down the lipofuscin, get rid of it. We can remove the glycation, and we can return the NAD plus to energy levels of where you were in your 20s again. And that's the reason this thing is working so well. So we have an enormous amount of power, and this is not a single, this isn't a magic bullet. It's based around three different systems. First, remove glycation. First, get rid of the second, get rid of the lipofuscin. And third, turn on the electricity with NAD+. And that's what we've done. So I hope that gives you a brief overview of that. But there's one other thing. Cell duplication rate is controlled by telomeres, and they're tips on chromosomes found only in stem cells. When a stem cell makes a new cell, it makes a duplicate of itself, but there's no telomeres in this new cell because it's expendable. So you start out with about 10,000 units. At conception, you've got 15,000. 9 months later, you're down to 10,000. Up to where you're in 20, your body can maintain that telomere length, and then so you're still sitting there about 10,000 units. So think of it like seeds in a sunflower. And so they just get picked out and gone and gone. Every time you make a new cell, you lose telomere units because they're the network that the new cell has to weave the spiral DNA around and follow where the X or Y chromosome. So I get a little too technical sometimes, sorry. But anyway, with that, telomere units go down. And telomeres, there was a Nobel Prize won just 5 or 6 years ago because they didn't know what telomeres were. They saw they were there, and 3 scientists started to research them, and they found out telomeres are really the ones that control how often a stem cell can duplicate. And so if your telomeres are low, the duplication rate goes way down with it. It's also they call it the igniter of the stem cell. So if telomeres are short, it doesn't matter how healthy your cell is. You're going to live longer with that kind of thing, but you're going to run out of a track to run on because you're running out of telomeres. So this is where TSX comes in now, because TSX, I looked at the research that had been done with the Nobel Prize winners, and guess where some of those ingredients, the main ingredients that can support long telomeres, come from? It comes from the same ingredient that Lai Chen had in his formulation with the others, and they would support maintaining healthy long telomeres. So I took that science, put that together, and made TSX, so that now you have a track to run on, and the trainer of the car that's going down that track, you now can go at a much greater speed because the track is being built ahead of you that you're going on instead of running off the track and going over the cliff. I try to give you some practical ways that you can think about this. So here's the key, the 1-2. If you have telomeres that ignite the stem cells and they control the rate of duplication, shorter you get, slower the duplication. If you can keep those long, and the body has a mechanism for doing that, which it does, but it goes down with time too. So your telomere units just can't be rebuilt, but at the rate that they're being lost. But now there's a way you can support long telomeres, and we have to watch that because there's a patent on it. So we just have to say this supports long telomeres and protects them from some type of oxidative damage because they're so key to it. And so now if you have long telomeres and you have stem cells that return to where they were when you were young, what do you think you're going to be? Your duplication rate is high. Your cells are increasing faster than you're losing them, and you're growing younger. So from now on, age is only a number. It's a chronological age has nothing to do with, or very little to do with what your biological age is. My biological age now is about 30 years younger, and I have it tested. You can kind of telomeres counted. And my biology is about 30 years. I'm going to get it done next month. It's my birthday, so I'll see where I'm at with that. But in just a short number of years, 3-4 years, my biology has gone back about 30 years. And now with the age pill to fire it, I'm ready to go. I'll give you one more little analogy with this is if you had a toy airplane and it had a propeller with a rubber band on it, and if you wound that propeller up so you put all that energy into that rubber band, that would be like the telomeres. And the rubber band, or the propeller, would be like the age pill. So you throw that plane off, and that propeller spins very fast, and it glides out there further than you could if you were just gliding it, and it just goes. But as the rubber bands unwind, then the propeller starts slowing down, and that's how telomeres work with age cells. And so then you come to a crash. But suppose you had a toy airplane, and you had a way, as it flew, that it could rewind itself as fast or faster than what it was, the energy from it was being used by the propeller, then in theory, you could fly that thing forever unless it ran into something. And that's what this is. This system is so similar like that. Now we have a track to run on, and we're looking at things that where the human body has the ability to live between 120 and 150 years, depending on your genetic inheritance. And they call that, and there's a certain number of divisions and that have to do it, and they call it the Hayflick limit. And they said nobody can get over the Hayflick limit. Well, Lai Chen did. He went 100 years over that, and Lai Shizhen, one of his predecessors, lived about almost 230 years. So yeah, what is the Hayflick limit? Well, it's limited because of telomeres, that's the big thing, and then stem cell deterioration. But if your telomeres are not limited, they're unlimited, and your regeneration rate is like you were a young person again, what are we looking at now? The Hayflick limit is just, it's part of the past. In a way, I mean, for people that don't, of course, they all face that. But we die at middle age. And people die at about 80, and you could live to be 150. You're dying at middle age. But nobody dies at middle age. You die of a disease that's due to decay and degeneration. And that's what aging is. Aging is not a disease. And therefore, if it's not a disease, it's a treatable condition. And that's what we're doing. And so that's how we don't make the medical claims, because the government, the FDA, doesn't classify age as a disease, and which is not. It's just things wearing out and getting plugged up and those kinds of things. And so we can restore that to where they were, we believe. We can support the stem cells to with their own internal mechanisms by giving them these exotic, powerful combinations of ingredients, and they just start repairing themselves. This is what they did in the studies. And our product hasn't been studied, incidentally, and so we can't make claims for our product, but I'm using this type of technology, and you can look it up, and I publish a lot on Facebook about it. But with that, you can now start to rewind the rubber band within you, and your propeller will spin faster. And what are we looking at now? I tell you what, David Sinclair from Harvard Medical School, Dr. Sinclair said, we're looking at immortality. Now, he's talking about immortality with the one to create NAD plus for energy, for electrical energy, and in the stem cell, but you have to combine it with this Nobel Prize-winning technology from telomeres, too, so it can run like at max speed and then not run out of the telomere units. Now, one last little point is cancer cells are immortal. If you have a cancer cell, it could live forever. If you could take it out, put it in a petri dish, and just give it the right nutrients and everything else, you'd come back in 10,000 years and you'd have a mountain of it that would have grown, because they cells don't die. And the reason they don't die is when the DNA is broken in a cell where it loses its ability to control its duplication rate, they produce, the stem cell tries to repair it and produces a lot of an enzyme that keeps rebuilding the telomere units that are being lost. And so that's why stem cells are immortal. It's just they're out of control. And so, cancer cells. So now we can take a stem cell that is in control, and we can maintain those long telomeres, and we can support it to as a precursor to make tremendous amounts of energy. And what are you going to be? You're going to be younger, healthier. Like people are hearing on today with all the things. Every product I make is extremely powerful, and in the world, no one is doing that. They just do minimal products for business and with low levels of common ingredients generally, but it's not what I'm into. I'm into the most scientifically advanced discoveries. And there's nothing, and I tell people this, the age pill or the molecule that would create NAD is the single greatest discovery in the history of human health. In fact, his Time magazine wrote an article on it, and they said the fountain of youth was not a mystical water. It is a molecule, and that's the molecule they're talking about. So this has got this amounts of credibility. This isn't ancient Chinese formula, make you feel better. It's not that thing. This is real powerful science. The Chinese too, of course, but now we're taking it because of new technologies and ability to do things and to concentrate them and to address the system as a whole, which the Chinese try to do also. But because we can do that, we can have results that are just off the charts. So if you want to grow younger every day, it's really easy. Just take TSX and the age pill. Then if you have afflictions like we're talking about Renovator, take Renovator for arthritis. I'll tell you what the age pill will do for arthritis. You will feel so good because so many things happen. And then you take a little Super Omega Plus. That supports building the lubricity in the joints. So you have all those. So you have a condition that's arthritis, as an example. The age pill and TSX with tremendous amounts of regeneration. So if it's regenerating, then feed it with some of the nutrients, and some of them like Super Omega Plus, brain vitality, go in and support the ability to rebuild the brain, what new brain tissue is made of, and if you have the activity to regenerate instead of the brain, by the time you're 70, you lost about 25% of your brain volume and about 50% of functionality with it. So can you build a new brain? You bet your bippy you can if you support it properly with the right nutrients so its own natural biological systems can work. So no matter what your condition is, vision, that's great for eyes and those types of things. And we can go on. If you want incredible amounts of energy every day, nitric oxide is the key to that, and we've got 4 Restore. So it doesn't matter where you're at. And if you want to build muscles, Sisel Rip will build muscles without exercise. And if you do exercise, you gain 3 times more muscle mass, and you recover twice as fast. And your endurance levels are increasing. If you're on the age pill, you see where all this goes? The age pill, TSX. It takes you to where you can do much, if not most, of what you want with your body to make it healthier and much younger. And so I know I've gone a long time, Jackie. I apologize for that with the call. But this is the power we have in the age pill and in TSX. No one in the world has it like this. Nothing that's out there. There's one that builds telomeres. There's one that creates the energy, but they're so incomplete. This is. I mean, they're like throwing a rock in the pond. This is like a super nuke going off. That's the difference between the formulation. So, anyway, I won't take any more of your time this evening, but I hope this is very helpful to you and gives you some ideas. And if you listen to the call and take some notes, you can create your own presentation with it. I mean, in simple things, you can say to people, how much older do you want to be? And, oh, no, not any older. How would you like to be younger every day instead of older every day? We have the answer for you, see? Does this look like something that would be good for you? And see, simple presentations like that, then you got some information to back it up. Don't try and be a little Tom on this thing when knowing all of the things, but learn the basic things that you're talking about. Supports building energy in the cell, supports long telomeres so the cells can duplicate at a very fast rate, supports remodeling the cell and removing all of the accumulated garbage, and that has occurred in a lifetime. So you have a tremendous opportunity. This is not just the greatest product in the history of human health. In network marketing, this is the big one of all time, and we're going to build a multi-billion-dollar business on it. So that's my information for you tonight. I'm sorry I do get going on it because I'm
this is great, Tom. You know, you've got our full attention, and you've hit on